All right, let me ask you something. What do you do when a massive group of people suddenly shows up at your border? I don't mean an army in neat lines. I mean families, kids, carts, animals, whatever they could carry, along with fear and weapons. Do you let them in and hope your systems can handle it? Do you shut the gate and deal with the consequences? Or do you say, sure, come in, we'll figure it out later? Do you know what makes that decision really dangerous? When you're absolutely convinced you're the strongest power on Earth while you're making it. Because Rome was, and honestly, Rome had every reason to feel that way.
I am Valens, Emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire. I do not rule a fragile state. I rule Rome, an empire of laws, roads, legions, and discipline, built precisely for moments like this. Peoples have crossed our borders before. They always learn the same lesson. Rome decides who enters. Rome decides the terms. And Rome decides when force becomes necessary.
And that's where things start to get interesting. Because confidence feels exactly like wisdom, until it suddenly doesn't. Experience feels like a guarantee, until something shows up that doesn't fit the old rules. And do you know what? This part should sound familiar. Big systems often think they're managing numbers, logistics, procedures. But the people involved? They're living something very different. So here's the question I want you to keep in the back of your mind. What happens when an empire treats a massive human movement like routine administration? When speed feels smarter than patience? When an emperor believes the situation is already under control before he even sets foot near the battlefield? Because somewhere near a place called Adrianople, all of those assumptions are about to be put to the test. Welcome to the podcast. Battles that shaped Europe.
We shall never surrender!
The Battle of Adrianople, 378 CE. Part 1. The World Before the Battle. Before Goths, Huns, or battlefields even enter the picture, let's rewind for a moment and look at Rome itself. Because since the last episode, the Roman world has changed. Not in ways that jump out on a map, but in ways that quietly change everything. Christianity isn't controversial anymore. It's official. It's imperial. So what does that mean in practice? It means emperors aren't just arguing about borders and taxes anymore. They're arguing about doctrine, councils, and who's right in the eyes of God. And you know what? Once belief becomes politics, compromise gets a lot harder. Then there's the big one. The empire is split. East and West. 2 courts, 2 emperors, 1 empire. At least on paper. Sounds efficient, right? But is it? Not really. Because now every decision comes with comparison, competition, and ego. Politically, that mindset matters more than it seems. Victories aren't just about safety anymore. They're about prestige. They prove legitimacy. They keep generals loyal. So what does hesitation look like in a system like that? It looks like weakness. It looks like incompetence. And worse, it looks like an opening for someone else to step in. And you know what? In Roman politics, that could be fatal.
Rome is vast. It cannot be ruled from a single throne forever. Division is not decay. It is management. The East is wealthy, organized, disciplined. Its cities thrive. Its armies are paid. Its borders are guarded. This is not weakness. It is Rome proving it can adapt. And adaptation requires decisive emperors.
Now zoom out with me for a second. Far beyond palaces, councils, and marble halls, north of the empire, Across what we'd now call Germany, the Netherlands, Denmark, and parts of Poland lives a patchwork of Germanic tribes. Franks along the Rhine, in today's Western Germany and the Low Countries, Saxons near the North Sea coast, northern Germany, and increasingly Britain, Vandals farther east, around modern Poland and the Carpathians. Different names, different customs, but here's the question: what do they all have in common? They're close enough to Rome to feel its pull, and strong enough to feel tempted by it. For a long time, this system actually works. Rome doesn't explode under pressure, it absorbs it. Young warriors cross the border for Roman pay. Roman goods move north. Cultures mix, slowly, unevenly, but steadily. So where's the problem? Systems like this only work when the pressure stays predictable. And in the late 4th century, it doesn't. It surges.
They trade with us, serve in our armies, measure themselves against our standards. Pressure is expected. That is precisely why Rome prepares for it.
Far to the east, beyond the Black Sea, beyond anything Rome is really paying attention to, something new starts moving. The Huns. Are they coming to conquer Rome? No. Do they care about emperors, borders, or cities? Also no. They come from the steppe, where survival depends on speed, horses, and dominance. Power means mobility. Standing still means death. So they move. And when they collide with settled peoples, they don't negotiate. They shatter them. That shockwave doesn't stop where the Huns stop. Tribes fall. Others flee. Stories spread faster than armies ever could. Franks watch their eastern neighbors nervously. Saxons hear rumors carried by traders and mercenaries. Vandals feel pressure building behind them. And here's the scary part. No one knows who the Huns will hit next. So what do people do when they don't know? They move.
Nomads have always terrified farmers. Fear exaggerates every threat. Rome responds to facts, not panic.
And that brings us, naturally, to the Goths. They live right in the danger zone, in what's now Romania, Moldova, and southern Ukraine, directly north of Rome's frontier. And even before the crisis hits, they're not one single people. Which raises an important question. Who exactly are the Goths? Closest to Rome are the Thervingi, literally the forest people. They live in wooded regions near the Danube. They farm. They trade with Roman towns. They know Roman law, Roman officials, Roman promises. Later on, history will call them the Visigoths. And you know what that means? They already live halfway in Rome's world.
Then they already understand Rome. And understanding Rome means understanding order.
Farther east are the Greuthungi, the steppe people. Open plains closer to the Black Sea, more mobile, more cavalry-focused, less tangled up in Roman trade and bureaucracy. They'll later be known as the Ostrogoths. Same roots, very different realities. So when pressure comes from the east, who do you think feels it first? When the Huns arrive, that difference becomes deadly. The Greuthungi are hit first, scattered, absorbed, broken apart. The Thervingi watch this unfold and understand something immediately. They can't fight this. They can't outrun it. And you know what? They don't even try.
Fight is a choice, so is submission. Rome offers structure. Those who accept it survive.
So the Goths make a decision that will change European history. They turn south, toward the Danube, toward Rome. Rome believes it's managing migration, The Goths believe they're bargaining for survival. The Huns keep moving. Other Germanic peoples are watching closely. And here's the part Rome doesn't fully see yet. Every decision it makes now sends a message far beyond its borders.
Let them watch. Rome has never ruled by uncertainty.
And that's the most dangerous belief of all, because no one thinks they're walking toward a disaster. They think they're being reasonable, organized, in control. They think they're handling reality. And history has a habit of punishing that exact assumption. Part 2. The Armies Gather. So how do we actually get from mismanaged refugees to two armies marching toward each other? Does it happen overnight? With one bad decision? No. It unfolds the way crises usually do. Slowly at first, and then all at once. For months, the Goths wait along the Danube. They're hungry, they're frightened, and they're completely dependent on Roman officials for food and protection. This is where the situation starts to rot. Supplies run short. Corrupt officials see opportunity. Food is sold at absurd prices. Sometimes even dog meat is traded for Gothic children. So how long does desperation stay manageable? Not very long. Clashes break out. Trust evaporates. Control slips. When Roman commanders finally try to reassert authority with force, something breaks. The Goths don't scatter. They organize. What Rome thought was a temporary holding problem becomes open rebellion in Thrace, modern southern Bulgaria and European Turkey. Roman detachments are ambushed, supply lines are cut, the countryside begins to burn. By the time Valens decides to march, this is no longer about restoring order. It's about suppressing a war Rome never planned and doesn't fully understand. Valens moves quickly. Too quickly. Why? Because he knows his Western co-emperor is already marching east with reinforcements. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Waiting means sharing credit. Valens isn't reckless by nature. He's careful, administrative, deeply concerned with legitimacy. But that concern creates pressure. He wants a clean, decisive victory. One that proves his authority beyond question. One that shows he doesn't need help. One that silences doubt. In moments like this, speed starts to feel like strength.
An emperor who waits for others to solve his problems teaches the world to doubt him. Rome does not share authority. It demonstrates it.
So by the summer of 378, Valens marches inland toward Adrianople with roughly 20 to 25,000 men. Is this the massive Rome of Caesar or Augustus? No. Is it still a serious imperial army? Absolutely. Heavy infantry at its core, backed by cavalry and auxiliaries, disciplined, armored, confident. This is an army designed to impose order, not to improvise. Opposite them are the Goths. No longer refugees, not quite a state, something far more volatile. Their leader, Fritigern, is not a king with absolute power. He's a negotiator, a survivor, a man holding together a coalition that could fall apart at any moment. He understands Roman thinking far better than Rome understands his. He knows he cannot defeat Rome in a neat, formal battle, so he avoids one. He delays, he negotiates, he buys time, and what he's really waiting for is simple: cavalry.
Delay is a sign of weakness. Rome learned that lesson long ago.
The two forces couldn't be more different. Roman infantry fights like a machine, shields locked, ranks tight, commands precise. When everything works, it's devastating. But that system depends on cohesion, clear orders, careful timing, Remove any one of those, and cracks appear. The Gothic force is irregular, but dangerous. Mixed weapons, lighter armor, and above all, fast, mobile cavalry, able to strike exactly where Rome is slowest. Rome expects a frontal clash. Fritigern expects confusion. Morale tells the same story. Roman soldiers expect a hard day, but a manageable one. A long march, a difficult engagement, then order restored. The Goths are fighting with their families behind them, and extinction behind that. They're not defending land, they're defending existence. And that changes how people fight.
Desperation drives men to mistakes. Rome survives because it does not fight on emotion.
And then there's the land itself. Open plains outside Adrianople, rolling ground, very little cover, perfect terrain for cavalry. It's August. The heat is oppressive, water is scarce. Roman soldiers march in heavy armor under the sun, expecting negotiations or a quick engagement. The Goths are already there, watching, waiting. Everything is now in place. A rebellion Rome believes it can crush. An emperor convinced speed will secure glory. A Gothic leader convinced patience will secure survival. 2 armies, 1 battlefield, and a decision that will be made before anyone truly understands what it's about to cost. Part 3. Into the Fray. The morning of August 9th, 378 feels ordinary, and that's the danger. Valens believes the Goths are nearby. He believes their numbers are manageable. He believes this will all be resolved today. Negotiation if possible, force if necessary. Victory either way. Seems reasonable, doesn't it? But there's one question that never really enters the calculation. What happens if he's wrong? Roman scouts ride out and come back with reports that sound comforting. A wagon camp, foot warriors, defensive positions. Nothing unexpected. But what are they actually counting? Bodies, not empty space. Stillness, not absence. And that distinction matters. Because what they don't see is just as important as what they do. The Gothic cavalry isn't there yet.
Advance in good order. Keep the line tight. Keep the intervals closed. They hide behind wagons because they fear us. Do not give them time to gather courage. Pressure breaks resistance faster than waiting ever could.
The Roman army moves forward under the August sun. Armor heats up fast. Sweat stings the eyes. Waterskins empty quicker than planned. They've marched far. They haven't fully rested. Can discipline carry an army through heat and exhaustion alone? For now, barely. Then messengers arrive from the Gothic camp. Fritigern asks to negotiate, requests time, offers discussion. Is he seeking peace? No. He's buying minutes. And minutes on this battlefield matter. Rome pauses. Not long. Just long enough for tension to tighten like a drawn bow. Some Roman units, tired, irritated, impatient, move without orders. Others see movement and assume it's the signal. A skirmish erupts on the flank. Steel flashes, men fall. And just like that, control slips away. Could anyone have stopped it now? Probably not. The battle begins, not by plan, but by momentum.
Hold your ground. No one advances without signal. Maintain formation. Formation is life. A broken line is a dead army.
The Roman infantry surges forward anyway. Shields lock, spears drive ahead. They slam into Gothic foot soldiers near the wagons. For a moment, it works. The Goths bend, they give ground. Dust swallows the field. This feels familiar. comforting even. But how long does familiarity protect you when the battlefield is changing? Not long. Then the sound changes. A low thunder, hooves hitting earth in rhythm, shouts carried on the wind. The Gothic cavalry returns. Thousands of riders crash in from the sides and rear, fast, relentless, everywhere at once. Roman units try to pivot, orders overlap, standards vanish in choking dust. Heavy infantry can't turn fast enough. They're built to push forward, not to spin, not to chase shadows.
Wheel the cohorts, close every gap. Do not pursue, hold the center. If the line holds, the enemy breaks. Remember your training.
But the line is already coming apart. Units are cut off. Cavalry punches through exposed flanks. Arrows and javelins rain down. The heat becomes unbearable. Armor feels like a furnace. Men collapse from exhaustion before blades even reach them. What was once a formation becomes clusters. Backs pressed together, shields raised in desperation. Rome's greatest strength, discipline, now traps its soldiers in place while the enemy moves freely around them. As the sun starts to sink, the Roman army is surrounded. No clear front, no clear rear, just noise, dust, blood, and confusion. Can an army still be an army when it no longer knows where it is? The Goths don't charge all at once. They circle. They probe. They strike wherever weakness appears. This isn't a single dramatic blow. It's something worse. A slow, merciless collapse.
Rally to the standards. Stand firm where you are. Rome does not flee. We endure. Hold, and the day will turn.
But the day doesn't turn. Standards fall. Officers are cut down while shouting orders no one can hear. Commands dissolve into instinct. Some units fight until they're wiped out where they stand. Others break and run, only to be hunted down across the open plain. And somewhere in the chaos, the emperor disappears from sight. By nightfall, the fighting ends. Not because anyone orders it to stop, but because there is nothing left to command. The plain outside Adrianople grows quiet. Broken shields, scattered armor, bodies cooling in the dust. And in that silence, Rome loses something far worse than a battle. It loses certainty. Part 4. The Price of Victory. When the fighting finally stops, the silence feels wrong, too heavy, too final, and it doesn't take long to understand why. Rome has lost. Not pushed back, not delayed, destroyed on the plain outside Adrianople. 2/3 of the Eastern Roman field army is gone. Elite infantry units wiped out, veterans dead where they stood. The rest scattered, wounded, shocked, running in small groups. So is this just another bad day for Rome? No, this isn't a setback. It's a rupture. And then comes the loss that truly shakes the empire. The emperor is dead. Valens never returns. No body is recovered, no funeral is held. Some say he fell fighting with his guards. Others say he was wounded, carried to a farmhouse, and burned alive when it was set on fire. Which version is true? Honestly, it doesn't matter. What matters is this: a Roman emperor has died in open battle against a foreign enemy. For Rome, that is almost unthinkable.
I believed discipline would be enough. That experience could replace caution, that authority alone could command the future. I was wrong. Rome did not falter because it lacked strength. It faltered because it believed the world would wait for it.
So, who actually won? The Goths stand on the field. Rome does not. But this isn't a victory of conquest. The Goths don't march on Constantinople. They don't dismantle the empire. They don't suddenly rule Europe. What they gain is something subtler and more powerful. Leverage. Recognition. From this moment on, Rome can no longer treat entire peoples as a temporary inconvenience. It has to deal with them as a permanent reality. The immediate aftermath is chaos. The Eastern Empire is exposed. There is no field army left to secure the Balkans. Cities reinforce their walls, officials scramble. Emergency recruitment begins, and more of those recruits are not Roman-born. Rome still exists, but here's the uncomfortable question. Does it still command automatic obedience? Not anymore.
An empire that cannot replace its dead must learn to live with those it once commanded. The world I tried to control was already moving.
Now zoom out with me, because this is where Adrianople really reshapes Europe. This battle does not start the migration period, but it destroys the last illusion that it can be stopped. The migration period isn't one invasion or one march. It's a long era, from the late 4th to the 6th century, when entire peoples move across Europe. Why? Pressure behind them, opportunity ahead, and suddenly, borders that no longer feel absolute. After Adrianople, Rome changes strategy. Instead of expelling migrants, it settles them. Instead of breaking tribes apart, it negotiates with their leaders. Land in exchange for military service. Autonomy in exchange for loyalty. Does that sound familiar? It should. It's the blueprint for medieval Europe. Peoples don't just pass through the empire anymore. They stay. The Visigoths move west through the Balkans into Gaul and Hispania. The Ostrogoths will later rule Italy itself. The Vandals cross Gaul and Spain before settling in North Africa. The Franks consolidate power in Gaul. The Saxons move into Britain. These aren't random migrations. They become kingdoms. They draw borders. They lay foundations. Roman roads, Roman cities, Roman law, now ruled by new elites with new identities. This is how Europe's political map begins to take shape. Not as one empire, but as many realms. Latin evolves into French, Spanish, Italian. Roman law blends with Germanic custom. Christianity spreads, shaped not by emperors, but by kings. Does medieval Europe appear overnight? Of course not. But Adrianople clears the way.
Empires do not end in a single afternoon. They change when they learn a truth too late. Adrianople was not only my defeat. It was Rome realizing it would no longer own the future alone.
So Adrianople is remembered not only for the dead it left behind, but for the world it set in motion. The migration period. The end of fixed borders. The beginning of a Europe shaped by movement, mixing, and negotiation. And whether we like it or not, the Europe we live in today, its peoples, its kingdoms, its languages, still carries the echoes of moments like this. Part 5. Echoes from the Past. Let's step away from marching formations and collapsing lines for a moment. Because long after the shouting stopped, Adrianople kept talking. Not loudly, not dramatically, but persistently. Through rumors, through silences, through the things no one quite knew how to explain. And here's the thing. This part of the story might feel closer than you expect. Let's start with one of the strangest details. No one ever finds Valens's body. Think about that for a second. A Roman emperor, ruler of half the known world, disappears on a battlefield, and all we're left with are competing stories. Some say he died fighting beside his guards. Others say he was wounded, taken to a farmhouse, and burned alive when it was set on fire. Which one is true? We don't know. And Rome never finds out. No certainty, no closure. And for a culture obsessed with ritual, memory, and authority, that absence is devastating.
An emperor without a body, without a tomb, that is not just death. That is the loss of meaning. Rome believed it could decide how history remembered it. Adrianople proved otherwise.
Our main written account comes from Ammianus Marcellinus, a former Roman officer turned historian. And here's something worth remembering. He wasn't there. His version is stitched together from survivors, second-hand reports, and memories shaped by shock and fear. And honestly, that's why it feels so familiar. Confusion, contradictory orders, heat, panic. No heroic speeches, no clean turning point, just systems cracking under pressure. Archaeology tells a similar story, mostly by what isn't there. No triumphal monument, no grand memorial, no official story carved into stone, just scattered weapons, broken armor, disturbed earth across the plains of Thrace. Rome didn't monumentalize defeat. It preferred forgetting, and maybe that tells us more than any statue ever could.
Empires remember victories to teach pride. They forget defeats to preserve illusion. But forgotten lessons return, usually harsher than before.
If you stand near the battlefield today, outside modern Edirne, nothing announces what happened there. Open land, rolling plains, a summer heat that still drains you faster than expected. It looks manageable, harmless, and that's the unsettling part. Because the most dangerous moments in history rarely look dramatic while they're happening. Now here's where Adrianople starts to sound uncomfortably familiar. The migration period that follows isn't chaos for chaos's sake. It's movement driven by pressure, people fleeing violence, people pushed by forces beyond their control, institutions trying to manage human movement with paperwork, rules, and confidence. Rome believed migration could be processed like administration, that discipline could replace empathy, that control could substitute understanding. And when that belief failed, force followed.
We saw people as a problem to be managed, not a reality to be understood. We asked how to control them, not why they were moving. That mistake does not belong to Rome alone.
And that's the echo that reaches into today's Europe. Different century, different technology, different politics. Same fundamentals. Large-scale movement of people, fear on one side, desperation on the other. Institutions convinced they still have time, until suddenly, they don't. Does Adrianople give us easy answers? No, but it gives us a warning. Ignoring human movement doesn't stop it. Mishandling it makes it explode. Adrianople almost never shows up in movies or TV. Why? It's messy, morally uncomfortable, no clear villain, no satisfying victory. But it lives on in books, academic debates, military studies, and historical games, usually as the moment when things stopped being simple. An empire at its height, a decision made with confidence, a future quietly, permanently altered.
History does not punish ambition. It punishes blindness. The world moves, whether empires allow it or not. Those who forget that learn it the hard way.
And maybe that's why Adrianople still matters. Not because of tactics, not because of numbers, but because it shows what happens when power mistakes certainty for wisdom. That lesson didn't expire in 378, and it hasn't expired now either. Part 6. What if? What if Valens had waited just a few days, just long enough for his nephew Gratian and the Western legions to arrive? What if Roman scouts had asked a different question? Not who is in front of us, but who isn't? What if someone had noticed that the Gothic cavalry wasn't missing, just out of sight? And here's the big one. What if Adrianople hadn't ended in catastrophe? What if it ended in a Roman victory? Or even a hard, controlled stalemate? Because in that version of history, Europe doesn't just adjust, it takes a completely different path. Start with the Goths themselves. In this alternate world, Fritigern's original idea actually works. The Goths don't become the destroyers of Rome, they become part of its framework. They're settled as foederati, and that word matters. Foederati aren't conquered subjects. They're allied communities, allowed to live inside the empire in exchange for military service. They keep their leaders, they keep their identity, but they defend Rome's borders and fight in its wars. If you're looking for a modern comparison, think permanent armed allies living inside the system, not occupation, not conquest.
I feared that granting land would weaken authority. I did not see that loyalty, once earned, can defend borders better than fear ever could.
In this reality, both Thervingi and Grithungi are settled deliberately in Thrace and Illyricum, not wandering, not starving, not pushed to desperation. A new military class takes shape. Roman-trained, Gothic-manned, tied to the empire because their future depends on it. And here's the question that changes everything. What happens when the next threat arrives? And Rome isn't alone. Because the Huns still come. That part doesn't change. But this time, they don't crash into a fractured frontier. They hit a wall. A Roman command structure reinforced by Gothic cavalry. Men who understand steppe warfare, speed, and shock tactics. A living shield across southeastern Europe. So does Attila still terrify Gaul? Does he reach Italy at all? Maybe not. The dominoes don't fall, because the first one never tips.
Strength is not only steel and numbers. It is knowing who stands with you when the storm finally arrives.
That stability ripples west. Without Adrianople destroying the Eastern Field Army, Rome never becomes desperate. It doesn't drain its treasury replacing lost legions. It doesn't rely on short-term mercenaries with shaky loyalty. And suddenly, a moment you think you know never happens. No sack of Rome in 410. Alaric, descendant of these Goths, doesn't become a rebel king. He becomes a Roman general. Ambitious? Absolutely. Dangerous? Possibly. But inside the system. And without the shock of the eternal city falling, the Western Empire doesn't unravel so fast. Does it last forever? Probably not. But could it last centuries longer? Very possibly. Then there's religion, and this is where the consequences reach deep into the Middle Ages. The Goths are Arian Christians. Rome is Nicene. In simple terms, that's a disagreement about hierarchy, about whether Jesus is equal to God the Father or subordinate to him. In our timeline, that difference poisons politics for generations. But in this alternate world, maybe the Goths gradually adopt Nicene belief peacefully. Or maybe Arian Christianity survives as a legitimate European tradition. Either way, the result is the same. Less centralization, less religious monopoly, a Christian Europe that's more diverse, less tightly controlled. Conflict doesn't disappear, but it looks very different.
I believed unity required sameness. Perhaps faith, like empire, could have survived diversity without tearing itself apart.
Culturally, the impact runs even deeper. No violent collapse of Roman administration, no sudden loss of literacy, no abandoned roads or forgotten aqueducts. Instead of a dark age, Europe experiences something else. A slow Roman-Germanic synthesis. Latin evolves, but not in isolation. Germanic structures blend in earlier. Languages form that bridge Romance and Germanic worlds instead of splitting them apart. A hybrid civilization emerges. Urban, mobile, layered. Not a dark age. A Gothic Roman Renaissance, beginning as early as the 5th century. And finally, the dam holds. In our timeline, Adrianople sends a message across Europe. Rome can be broken. That message emboldens the Vandals, Suebi, Alans, and Burgundians. It leads to the frozen Rhine crossing in 406. It turns migration into flood. But in this alternate history, Rome still looks dangerous, still looks confident, still looks capable of absorbing newcomers without collapsing. Tribes ask for permission instead of forcing entry. Borders bend, but they don't burst. Europe still changes, just without chaos.
An empire does not fall because the world moves. It falls when it refuses to move with it. Had I waited, Rome might not have ruled forever, but it might have guided what came next.
So maybe the real question isn't, what if Rome had won at Adrianople? Maybe it's this. What if Rome had learned, early enough, that integration was strength, not weakness? Because history doesn't hinge on destiny. It hinges on timing, on judgment, and sometimes on the courage to wait. So, that's Adrianople. Not the moment Rome collapsed, but the moment Rome stopped pretending it could hold the entire world together by force alone. From here on, the empire isn't just guarding borders anymore. It's asking uncomfortable questions about itself. Who actually belongs? Who really commands? And maybe the most dangerous one of all, who is right? Because from this point forward, the biggest fights aren't about land. They're about belief.
I am Theodosius, born a soldier, raised in the shadow of emperors, called to rule an empire already split in faith, loyalty, and purpose. I have fought barbarians beyond the frontier. Now I march against Romans. Not for territory, not for gold, but for the soul of the empire itself.
And this is where things take a sharp turn. Two Roman armies are moving toward each other through the Julian Alps. Not outsiders, not rebels, Romans. One side carries the old gods, temples, rituals, traditions older than memory. The other marches beneath a single sign, the cross. Between them lies a narrow valley, a cold river called the Frigidus. And here's the question no empire ever answers peacefully. What happens when belief itself steps onto the battlefield? Do you want to know how a clash of gods actually looks? Then come with us to the next episode. The Battle of the Frigidus River, 394 CE.